When it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away.
Current global circumstances suggest it's likely that this virus will cause a pandemic.
We're doing very well.
We are at the beginning of the storm.
Lockdowns across the nation, more than 300,000 Americans dead and counting, and a global race to find a cure. In 2020, a virus smaller than a speck of dust brought the world to a standstill. But few countries have been as severely affected by the coronavirus as the United States. In January, reports emerged of a mysterious virus in Wuhan, China, that had already infected dozens of people. At the time, health officials were alarmed, but still had doubts about what would become the COVID-19 pandemic. The CDC reported the first coronavirus case in the US back in late January. Meanwhile, countries like China, South Korea, and soon Italy were struggling with the new virus, a sign that it was spreading quickly. When the virus first hit America, limited testing meant that thousands of infections went officially uncounted. But as it was becoming clear that COVID-19 would have a serious impact on the United States, like it did in Asia and Europe, President Donald Trump seemed blissfully unconcerned.
We think it's going to have a very good ending for us, so that I can assure you. Many of them are getting better. Some are fully recovered already. So we're in very good shape. When you have 15 people, and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to zero, that's a pretty good job we've done.
Then on March 11th, the World Health Organization made an announcement.
In the past 2 weeks, the number of cases of COVID-19 outside China has increased 13-fold, and the number of affected countries has tripled. COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
2 days later, Trump finally declared a national emergency to try to combat the virus.
Today I am officially declaring a national emergency.
But the president's efforts fell flat. His plan hampered the ability to test, treat, and contain the virus. Instead, he focused on boosting the economy, while ventilator machines and personal protective equipment like gowns and gloves were growing scarce in medical facilities across the country. By the end of March, America became the hardest hit from the pandemic, with at least 81,000 confirmed cases, more than any other country. While the coronavirus raged on, Trump was also allowing another epidemic to spread: xenophobia.
It's a disease, without question, has more names than any disease in history. I can name Kung Flu.
He's used his bully pulpit to foment hate.
As COVID-19 infections spread wildly, more than 30 states had to shut down, a public health necessity, according to experts. Millions of Americans lost their jobs, bringing the U.S. economy to a screeching halt. By April, the U.S. employment rate hit 14.7%, the highest since the Great Depression. 20.5 million jobs vanished in the worst monthly loss on record. But Trump downplayed the effect the pandemic had on the economy.
This is not a financial crisis. This is just a temporary moment of time that we will overcome together as a nation and as a world.
He even ignored public health rules by shrugging off the need to wear a mask. His own aides told him it was necessary to send a message that Americans should cover their faces to prevent the spread. But instead, he encouraged his followers to protest against social distancing restrictions in some states. His call followed protests in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio, demanding that restrictions be lifted.
When they say comply, what do we do?
Defy!
In America breaks all the rules.
Then in May, the U.S. surpassed more than 100,000 coronavirus deaths, the highest death toll in the world, and the infection rate in the South and Midwest continued to surge, breaking single-day records. Trump was forced to admit the death toll was much worse than he had originally predicted.
It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. Something I don't like saying about things, but that's the way it is.
But that didn't stop him from holding campaign rallies where he consistently downplayed the severity of the virus and inflated the competence of his administration.
It affects virtually nobody. It's an amazing thing.
By the fall, the death toll had more than doubled, As the presidential race ramped up, the virus became one of the main issues on the campaign trail.
You know, people get sick from the other also. It's not just from the virus. They get sick from all of the other things that happen.
We can't afford 4 more years of a president who, instead of fighting the virus, attacks doctors.
A month before Election Day, Trump announced on Twitter that he had tested positive and he was soon hospitalized, a development that seemed all but inevitable given his apparent indifference to protecting himself and others with basic social distancing measures. But he returned to the White House while still contagious. Since then, at least 18 other people who were in close contact with the president tested positive. Now, as the US has thousands of deaths a day and approaches 20 million infections, the White House has appeared to all but stop fighting against the virus. And the outgoing president is doing victory laps as vaccines start to be rolled out.
Our nation has achieved a medical miracle. We have delivered a safe and effective vaccine in just 9 months.
And as 2020 comes to a close, the prospect of immunizations has the world hoping the pandemic will soon be over. But in the US, it looks like it could get worse before it gets better. A likely new coronavirus stimulus package offers little relief to millions of Americans facing unemployment and possible eviction. Even with vaccines already being distributed, there are limited supplies, and there's plenty of misinformation that could hurt efforts to vaccinate Americans. This is all part of a year-end abyss that the country is fighting.